Good afternoon, Budget Committee and Chair. My name is Tom Boyat. I'm the Division Director of the Community Development Division in Development and Public Works. And it's my privilege today to walk you through the Community Development Operating Budget and the city's capital budget, which is housed in Community Development. Community Development is primarily concerned with the future of Springfield through our built environment on both the private side and the public side, and that is within the city limits and the urban growth boundary. And through the built environment, our focus is on the quality of life in Springfield. So my goal this afternoon is to share with you our 5 key service areas and to in the operating budget, and then to take a look at the numbers, the high level numbers from a couple of different angles, and then to wrap up the operating budget with a short highlight of our accomplishments in 2020, our 2021 initiatives, and then future considerations. And then at that point, I'll pause for a short intermission and grab my capital budget notes and then move into the capital budget. And I can see I'm going to have to click that and advance. So here is the overall budget summary, operating budget for the Community Development Division. And what you're going to see there is essentially very close to a doubling between FY20 and FY21, and that is due, completely due to the merging of the current development division with community development, and then bringing over most of the staff from the former office of director from back when Annette Spickard was here. So we've reorganized development and public works into 3 divisions now from 5, and community development was really the absorption point where most of that staff and program went. And really at the bottom line though, when we get through apples to apples, this budget reflects about a 4% increase over the former operating budgets before they were combined. If you're seeing that increase between FY19 actuals and FY2020, I can tell you that that represents some success we had getting community development block grant funds out the door. And so that's really what that difference is. All right, moving forward, you should be seeing a slide now of our 5 key service areas. And I'd like to talk a moment about these areas because this is really what we accomplish for the citizens of Springfield. The Development Center is where we're partnering with our customers to approve land use applications, to approve engineering reviews for development, but also for infrastructure that's built by private development and then dedicated to the public for the rest of time to be owned, operated, maintained, preserved, improved, and ultimately replaced. And then in the Development Center, just a host of other smaller programs like the Business Licensing Program, the Code Compliance Program. The bulk of our survey group is located here. So that's what we're doing there. Infrastructure Capital, plans the infrastructure for future growth and develops and delivers projects in our infrastructure systems, which are essentially streets and pipes, swales, city buildings and facilities. And that will be the subject of this follow-on presentation of the capital budget. So I'll get into some more there. Land use planning, we're managing our comprehensive plans, our state mandated comprehensive plan, our refinement plans, the plan designations and the zoning that go into that. This group also staffs the Planning Commission, and currently in this program, the rewrite of the development code is housed in there, and also our lead for the council's affordable housing strategy. Federal Housing and Community Services is responsible for our CDBG, our Community Development Block Grant funds, and our home investment partnership funds, which we have to, which we work on together with Eugene. Those funds come to the cities from Housing and Urban Development, and our job is to work with the City Council and the Community Development Advisory Committee and get those funds out to our community partners, like Catholic Community Services with the G Street Oasis, Cornerstone Community Housing for affordable housing projects, St. Vincent de Paul, and others. Looking at the Federal Transportation Planning Program, this takes care of our state and federal transportation requirements. Through this program, we secure our Metropolitan Planning Organization, our Central Lane MPO discretionary federal funding. We're bringing to Springfield about $4 to $6 million every 3 years for needed transportation projects through this program. I do want to say, though, that 90% of those dollars, and I'll cover this in the capital presentation, but 90% of those dollars do not pass through our budget. They're held by ODOT. The 10% that does go through our budget, even though we manage and deliver those projects, the money's paid from ODOT directly to the contractors, but the 10% that we do have in the budget is typically for our local match. So I'm going to flick the slide here and give it a second to catch up. This is a look at our FTE, our personnel by service area. And so what you can see here is that the development center is the largest group. I do want to say that these numbers are roll-ups. You know, development centers probably 29.x, and federal housing and federal transportation probably 2.x. But this gives you a good rounded it shows you how our staff are addressing our key service areas. Budget by service area is interesting. It does not track directly with our staff by service area, and that's because if you see the Federal Housing and Community Services Program at about 18 or 19% there with 1.79 million, most of that money, remember that we have 2+ staff delivering that program. So most of that money is passing through the budget and out into the community, and that skews things a little bit. Revenues by fund, also very interesting. Just if I can pop the cursor in here very quickly, show you that, for example, this building code fund right here, 1.2 million estimated revenue. Those are dollars that can only be spent on plan reviews, building permits, inspections, and certificates of occupancy. Much like the purple horizontal column, the Community Development Fund really can only be spent on that purpose. And again, those are the dollars that pass through the budget. So, you know, isolating those two, you're going to see that storm drainage, sanitary sewer operating, the street fund, and the general fund are primarily what support our activity. Jumping into accomplishments, the development center has really stepped up and delivered permits and plats and annexations and plan amendments, zone changes, sign permits, code compliance issues, everything that comes across our permit counter. They've done a great job this year. And in particular, in the last 6 weeks, when we very quickly moved into a more digitally based environment. Street bond repaving, we got our first 2 projects done. Those were our smallest and I would say easiest projects. Even though we're moving quickly, we're walking before we run, and that's important. The City Council adopted code amendments to implement our transportation policies. The residential section of the new draft code is out for public review. The Main Street Safety Project is moving into its solution concepts. And we're also poised with Eugene to adopt the 5-year consolidated housing plan, which must be in place in order to receive those federal HUD funds. Looking at initiatives, plenty of those coming up. You can see we love to bring residential development code to council for adoption in 21, to make a lot of progress with the commercial development code to hit the bulk of the street fund bond projects in 2021. Franklin Phase 2 design, COVID recovery planning. We expect that's already begun, and we expect that to really dominate conversations for a while. And we will be working through that planning as we continue to deliver our regular services. Then again, the Digital Development Center, something near and dear to my heart. We have made leaps and bounds out of necessity in the last 6-7 weeks, and that's moved us quite a bit along. We will need to go back and do things in more permanent ways than baling wire and tape and whatnot, but it's really been fairly exciting. And then our ODOT federal aid certification, so that we can deliver our own projects and potentially provide those services at cost to our smaller partner cities in the region. Future year considerations, I'll give this a second. Future year considerations, write down the list: North Gateway planning for urban development, robust online development center portal. We've got that legislated $3 million from the state in 2019 to work with St. Vincent de Paul to develop a brand new manufactured home park as an affordable housing project. That's going to be exciting. Federal cert, potential for a street bond renewal, and then moving into the funding and construction phase for Main Street safety. So with that, I'm going to take a short intermission and swap out my notes here and move to the city's 2021 capital budget. So the capital budget basically details investments in future infrastructure upgrades and new facilities construction. This is for our infrastructure assets in Springfield, the public assets, which include streets, sidewalks, paths, lights, traffic signals, sewer pipes, stormwater pipes, and above ground facilities, and property and buildings. Oh, and I do want to say this is an awesome graphic here, and you're going to recognize it when you see it in the pending street bond report that's coming out in a week or so. Project priorities in the capital budget derive from the 5-year capital improvement program. The CIP, being a 5-year plan, is still updated every 2 years, so it's like a rolling 5-year plan. It's a program of reasonably needed projects. What the capital budget does is it takes the highest priorities for funding out of the CIP and adopts that funding for those projects so that they can be designed and constructed. A real quick capital budget summary here. Matt Stouter in Environmental Services will have talked to you about the MWMC capital budget. Even though MWMC authorizes that budget, and then the cities of Eugene and Springfield and Lane County ratify that budget. MWMC has both an operating and a capital budget like we do. In our partnership in the MWMC capital budget flows through the city's capital budget, but that is a matter for Matt to explain to you on the regional side. What I'd like to talk about is this $25.5 million on the local side, which you can see is dominated by transportation this year. Something to understand about the capital budget is that it's really made up of two things: reappropriating money on projects that are still working through to completion because projects don't magically start on July 1st and then end on June 30th. But in order to bid and design and build a project, we've got to have the project's entire funding budgeted. So in this capital budget, for example, we are carrying forward about $17 million and adding just about $8.5 million of new revenue to the budget. Of note, I'm going to go back. I mentioned this before. We have about $8 million of federally funded capital projects this coming year, and those are not reflected in this budget. So because, as I said, they're held in ODOT's budget. What we have here is our 10% match. Realistically, when it's all said and done, our very ambitious goal on the capital side in 2021 is to move forward about $20 million worth of capital project activity. The sources of project funding are the usual suspects, and you can read those for yourself. There's more information on these in the capital budget memo. And again, just that reminder that 90% of that $8 million or so is not reflected in our budget, but still something that our work group will be delivering. Completed projects, this is just a highlight of a few of those. School crossing safety improvements, primarily with federal dollars. Regional fuel facility upgrades, that's at our fueling facility that we share with Springfield Utility Board and Springfield Public Schools. The long-awaited pedestrian activated signal at 66th and Main Street, that was the last of, I believe, 6 crossings improvements identified in the old Main Street safety plan. A nice project to be sure. And that's a picture of it down there in the bottom left. And then the bottom right is a picture of one of our first 2 street bond projects. I think that's 14th Street right around B with its new roadway surface and ADA ramps that comply with ADA standards. Looking ahead, all of the 2021 projects are in the capital budget document itself. This just pulls out a few of those. We're going to pave South 28th Street with federal CMAQ dollars. 2021 will be the bulk of the street bond project delivery. We'd like to extend the Jasper Sewer Phase 3 east and south along Jasper Road. This is to serve primarily residential development, and this is the area of the city where most of our new residential development is taking place. And then local sewer extensions, primarily to serve properties which are already annexed into the city limits, but for some reason still on septics. And there are pockets around the city where if the public can extend the sanitary, then those folks can get off septic, and that's good for water quality. Future year considerations, I'll give the slide a second here. Future year considerations, the largest emerging issue is really our deferred investments in city buildings and facilities and the systems that support those facilities, roofs, HVACs, any number of systems have a life cycle, and many of ours have it past that life cycle. And so, there's an estimate that we're about $60 million behind in this area, and so that's something to pay attention to. We want to be able to, I'm moving along now, we want to be able to continue our residential street rehabilitation, relying primarily on House Bill 2017 dollars from the state package for roadway preservation. There are future conversations to be had about a street bond renewal for commercial streets. And then certainly if there's economic stimulus that comes out of the C-19 recovery for infrastructure, this is the place where those projects will be housed. And with that, I'm just going to say a big thank you for bearing with me through this presentation. We're all very quickly learning how to do our business in new ways. would encourage you to think about questions that you have. This has been a very high-level presentation, but any questions that you have, please send those in to Nate and to Neil in the finance department, and we will get those answered for you. And with that, I thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. We're doing great things, and I look forward to the day when I can see each of you in person again. Thank you very much.